AMD just had one of its biggest days in years, exploding higher by 23% to finish Monday at $203.71 per share. That's a jump of $39 on the day. It's the kind of move that makes even casual investors sit up and ask, what on earth just happened? The short answer is that the company announced a landmark multi-year chip supply agreement with OpenAI, along with a warrant that could give OpenAI the right to take up to a 10% stake in AMD if performance milestones are met. This isn't just a one-off order, it's a major strategic deal that could reshape the entire competitive landscape in AI hardware and fundamentally change how Wall Street values AMD. For months, the narrative around AMD has been about catching up. Nvidia dominated training workloads with its A100H100 accelerators, and Intel was trying to claw its way back into relevance with its Gaudi line and with a splashy announcement of a $5 billion partnership with Nvidia on manufacturing. AMD, meanwhile, was steadily rolling out its MI300 family and ROCm software stack, but investor patience was wearing thin as headlines painted a picture of two giants pulling ahead. Monday's news flips that script. By locking in OpenAI, AMD has landed the single most high-profile customer in the generative AI world, a customer that had been seen as a near-exclusive Nvidia shop. This is OpenAI telling the market that AMD's next-generation accelerators are good enough to anchor its compute build-out for the coming years. The structure of the deal matters. AMD will supply chips starting with its MI450 series, and OpenAI has a warrant to acquire up to 160 million AMD shares, roughly 10% of the company, if certain shipment and performance milestones are met. That gives OpenAI skin in the game and signals to investors that this isn't a speculative order, it's a partnership with aligned incentives. For AMD, it means predictable, large-scale demand and the credibility that comes from being chosen by the most visible AI developer in the world. For OpenAI, it means diversification away from a single vendor and a hedge against supply bottlenecks. The market's reaction, a 23% surge, reflects not just excitement about revenue but a wholesale re-rating of AMD's competitive position. When you think about how the AI infrastructure market is evolving, this deal makes sense. Nvidia's H100S and forthcoming Blackwell parts are still the gold standard for training, but demand is so intense that even hyperscalers are scrambling to secure supply. OpenAI itself has been constrained by access to chips. By working with AMD, OpenAI not only gains additional capacity but also helps create a credible second supplier that could put downward pressure on Nvidia's pricing and expand the total pool of high-performance accelerators. For AMD, the risk is execution. It has to deliver chips on time, at scale, and with performance that meets or beats the targets in the agreement. If it stumbles, those warrants might never be exercised and the narrative could flip again. But for now, this is a watershed moment. It's also important to note the macro backdrop. The Federal Reserve's recent rate cut gave a general lift to growth stocks, and semiconductors had already started to recover from their early September wobble. But a move like Monday's isn't just macro. This is investors repricing AMD's future cash flows based on a real, disclosed contract. It's also traders and algorithms chasing momentum after a surprise catalyst. A lot of shorts who had bet against AMD on the idea that Intel and Nvidia were boxing it out likely had to scramble to cover. That short covering adds fuel to an already powerful rally. The volume on Monday was extraordinary, far above normal daily turnover, which is exactly what you see when a stock's narrative changes dramatically. There are still open questions. How dilutive will the OpenAI warrants be if exercised? Under what conditions will they be priced? How quickly can AMD scale its supply chain to meet this new level of demand? And how will Nvidia respond? But the reason the stock moved so violently is because, for the first time, AMD looks like it has a direct seat at the top table of AI compute, not just competing at the margins but supplying the single most important AI company on the planet. For investors who have been waiting for proof that AMD could land a marquee customer in accelerators, this is it. You can also see the psychological shift in how analysts and investors are talking about AMD. Over the summer, price targets had stagnated, and downgrades were creeping in as competition heated up. Now, within hours of the announcement, several firms issued positive notes calling the deal transformative and hinting at big upward revisions to revenue and earnings estimates. If those revisions materialize, the multiple investors are willing to pay for AMD's earnings will expand. That's why Monday's move wasn't just a spike, it was the market beginning to price in a new earnings power trajectory. From a technical standpoint, AMD obliterated resistance levels. It leapt over $180 without blinking and closed above $200 for the first time since early 2024. That kind of breakout, on that kind of volume, often signals the start of a new trend rather than a one-day wonder. But it also means expectations are now sky-high. The next few weeks will be about whether the stock can hold these gains as details of the deal are digested and as investors wait for AMD to deliver on its promises. Pullbacks are inevitable after such a big move, but the key will be whether new buyers step in on dips, seeing them as opportunities rather than warning signs. So what's the right angle for a Monday aftermarket video? The best approach is to frame it as a pivotal moment, AMD's entry into the first tier of AI compute suppliers, validated by OpenAI, with upside but also new scrutiny. Viewers want to know what this means for AMD's future, whether the rally is sustainable, and how it reshapes the competitive landscape. A title like AMD and OpenAI, the $203 breakout that changes everything, or AMD lands OpenAI, is this the start of a new era? Captures that excitement while hinting at the deeper analysis you'll provide. In the video itself, walk viewers through the day's price action, 23% up on massive volume, and explain the OpenAI deal in plain language, what the supply agreement covers, what the warrants mean, and why it matters. Contrast it with the Intel-Nvidia partnership that spooked investors just last week. Highlight that this isn't just a rumor but a formal arrangement with clear milestones. Explain the risks, execution, dilution, performance specs. But end by emphasizing the opportunity. For years, AMD has been building the products and software to challenge Nvidia in high-performance compute. Monday's announcement is the first clear proof that major customers are ready to bet on AMD at scale. Looking ahead, lay out the key catalysts. When will shipments begin? How will this flow through to revenue and margins? Will other AI players like Anthropic, Cohere, or Meta follow suit with their own AMD deals? Will analysts start revising earnings estimates upward? And how high could price targets go? By framing the video around these forward-looking questions, you'll give viewers both context and a reason to keep watching your future updates. Finally, strike the tone of measured optimism. Acknowledge that a 23% one-day gain is extraordinary and that some retracement is normal. But also make clear that this isn't just hype. OpenAI's warrant aligns incentives in a way that makes this a true partnership. AMD now has a shot at being more than an alternative to Nvidia. It could become a co-leader in AI infrastructure. If it executes, the financial and strategic rewards could be immense. That's why Monday mattered, and that's why this story is just beginning.